Hello again. This is Michael Whitaker. This is photo post number 17 of the 21 photo posts I'm doing on LinkedIn and sharing on Facebook. The topic of this post is embracing curiosity. The photo for this post is Rosa and Santa Barbara. So this post is about curiosity. Curiosity is really nothing more than investigating or observing or experiencing something that's new, unusual, exciting, or something along that way. It's just that desire to explore and to understand and to know more about something that's present or that about which you know, or something like that. Curiosity usually generates inquisitiveness and also exploratory behavior. So this post is about curiosity. I've selected this image, Rosa and Santa Barbara, because curiosity played a big part in my decision to capture this image. I was in Trinidad in the province of Sancti Spíritus in Cuba. This is not the same Trinidad that all the calypso music's about. This is simply a city in southern Cuba in the province of Sancti Spíritus. I really like morning light, so I tend to get up in the mornings earlier and go for a walk around the town, in this case Trinidad, where I was capturing photographs. So I was just simply walking around Trinidad when I spotted this lady, Rosa, sitting in the window of her home. What caught my attention was the statue in the background that I could see through the window of Rosa Frega's house. In the beginning, I wasn't sure if this was Rosa's home or if it was a church, because obviously the statue was a religious figure. Plus, if you look close at the photo, you'll see that Rosa has a rosary in her left hand. So I wasn't really sure if I was looking at someone's home or this was some part of a church. So as usual, I walked over to where Rosa was sitting, held up my camera, and said, "Por favor," while I was pointing my camera toward her. She very gracefully just nodded her head, giving me the consent to take her picture. I thought Rosa was interesting, but I was fascinated by the statue in the background. So I raised my camera, depressed the shutter 2 or 3 times, I don't remember, and captured the images that I wanted, one of which is this image. At that point, I had to locate my interpreter. He had wandered off to get some morning coffee, so I was able to get his attention and get him back over to where Rosa was. And I asked him, his name was Jesus, I asked Jesus to ask Rosa what the story was about the statue. Rosa explained when she was a young girl, which had to be many years ago. This photo was in the late 90s, and I'm guessing Rosa was at least in her 70s at this point. So her parents had rescued this statue of Saint Barbara, which they refer to as Santa Barbara. They had rescued this statue of Santa Barbara from a burning church. And apparently because they rescued it, it became theirs. Over time, her parents passed away, and Rosa inherited the statue, and it became a permanent figure or permanent furnishing in her home. This, in fact, was Rosa's home. The bars on the window have to do with the colonial period when the people with money lived in these larger houses and they were afraid the poorer people might present a threat to them. So people often ask, is Rosa in jail? No, These are just the bars on the window where she lives in Trinidad. So my curiosity treated me very well in this circumstance. I saw the statue caught my attention. I assumed there would be a story behind the statue, and there was. So curiosity was a huge part of me capturing this image. Before I show you a couple of other slides, I want to make the point that while I'm photographing people, sometimes the people being photographed are just as curious about me as I am about them. So curiosity literally is a two-way street. Whenever a person agrees to let me capture a photograph of them, I try to reciprocate by answering whatever questions they might have. To me, that's only fair. They agreed to let me capture their image. If they have questions, I am happy to answer their questions. More often than not, I learn things that I normally would not have learned if I had not asked questions or if they had not asked questions. So I want to give you two examples of those situations. This is a photograph of Carmen. She lives in Cienfuegos. I always have trouble saying Cienfuegos. I was walking down the streets of the city and looking at both sides of the streets as I was walking along. I saw Carmen sitting there by her window. I waved at her. It wasn't my intention to take her picture. I just waved at her and said, "Buenos dias." And she said, "Buenos dias" back. At that point, I looked through the window and I saw this portrait hanging on the wall. I looked at the portrait. I looked at Carmen. I looked at the portrait. I looked at Carmen. And it seemed to me that the person in the portrait and Carmen have very similar eyes. So I wanted to know, out of curiosity, of whom is this portrait on the wall? I assumed it would be a child of hers. So again, Jesus was very close. I got Jesus to come over. And I had pointed to Carmen. I'd pointed to the photo or the painting on the wall. And I pointed to my eye and to Carmen's eye. And by then, Jesus was there. And Jesus asked her, who is the person in the portrait? And Carmen responded, "It is my younger brother." And I asked Jesus to ask more about her brother and what was going on. My curiosity had the best of me, and it was a terrific question because Carmen responded, "This is my young brother who was killed by Americans during the Bay of Pig invasion in 1961. If you're not familiar with the Bay of Pig invasions, it was a U.S. CIA-funded initiative that used 1,400 Cuban exiles who had left when Fidel won the revolution. They got together, 1,400 Cuban exiles, formed a paramilitary force, and tried to land at the Bay of Pigs in April of 1961. The American effort was a failure. They were thwarted. The Cuban exiles had to quickly depart and exit. But in the process, there was a battle. And Carmen's brother, the person hanging on this wall, was killed during that invasion by American-funded troops. I felt terrible. I could not believe I asked that question. I thought, this is a situation where my curiosity is getting me into trouble. Carmen could tell, obviously, that I was feeling uncomfortable with her answer, and she responded through Jesus that I should not feel guilty, that she did not hold me responsible as an American. It was something between our two governments. As a matter of fact, this is the most common response I received during this project. During this project, I traveled every single province in the country of Cuba. Everywhere I went, I was treated extremely kindly, almost like a celebrity. And without exception, I would always ask, why are you being so friendly to me? I'm an American. My country has an embargo against your country. My country is making life difficult within your country. The answer was always the same. You're just a person. You're not the American government. There's no reason for us to have hostility toward you. So Carmen and I, through Jesus, talked for several more minutes. It turns out she has a son, who left and went to America and was currently living in Dade County in the Miami area. So my curiosity again served me well. I was curious about this photo, about this painting on the wall. I asked the question, and I got all sorts of information about Carmen and her family. As I mentioned just a couple minutes ago, the curiosity is not always mine. Sometimes the person being photographed also has curiosity, typically has questions. Carmen didn't really have any questions for me, but Jose did. This is Jose. He also lives in Cienfuegos. I saw him sitting here on this stoop, holding this box and a pack of cigarettes, an opened pack of cigarettes. And you can see from this photo, he was perfectly dressed, he was neat, well-groomed, sitting there, I thought very dignified, with his legs crossed, and I wasn't sure what he was doing. All I knew is I liked what I saw. I wanted to capture an image of this person. So again, I held up my camera, pointed it toward Jose, and said, "Por favor." Jose just nodded his head, and I captured a couple of frames, exposed a couple of frames of film, one of which was this image. Again, I had a curiosity, so I asked Jesus to come over. And I said, I'm curious to know what he's doing, sitting here in such a dignified manner, holding this box that looked like it had a handkerchief in it, and also an open pack of cigarettes. So Jesus asked. Jose explained that was his way of making extra money. Most Cubans have a pension. When I was traveling around Cuba at this point, most of them received the equivalent of $12 US a month. So most people tried to supplement their income. It's difficult to tell from this image, but if you'll look at Jose's collar here, you'll see there's something almost looks like a dicky behind his collar. It's actually a cloth covering his laryngectomy. He had had cancer of the larynx and had his larynx removed, and this cloth covered where he'd had the surgery. He could talk, but not very easily, but he explained to Jesus that he had been a member of Fidel's personal guard for a number of years until he became ill and no longer could work, and that now he has to sell individual cigarettes. I don't know how it is now, but back then cigarettes were expensive. Cubans on the street couldn't afford a whole pack of cigarettes. They could afford one or two cigarettes. Jesus smoked. He bought cigarettes and twisted them in two and smoked half at a time because he couldn't afford them. So Jose was selling cigarettes and handkerchiefs. He happened to have some handkerchiefs. I thanked Jose for letting me take his photograph. And as I turned to walk away, he said, "I have a question." And I said, "Sure, what's your question?" He said, "Why did you take my photo?" And I said, "Because I thought you looked very dignified and interesting." He said, "But why me?" He said, "Why would I even catch your attention?" He said, "I'm nobody special." I said, "You look really interesting, and you look very dignified, and I wanted to know more about you." We talked for a few more minutes, and then I left. One of my habits on this project was that I went back to the places I had captured images and gave a print of the image I captured to the person. I knew where I had captured this photo of Jose. So Jesus and I, on another trip, went back there to this location. I found someone standing around. I showed him the photo and said, "Where can I find Jose?" The very first person I asked led us directly to his door. Jesus knocked. We went. They let us in. We went in. And Jose immediately told his wife, "I know this person. He took my photo." It'd been several months since I'd taken a photo of Jose, but he remembered me. I sat down. We talked for a long time. We were there for 30 or 40 minutes. He told me lots of different things about him and about working directly with Fidel. When I said we needed to go, Jose said, "Wait a minute. Can you wait a minute?" And his wife spoke English, and she explained, "He wants to write you a note." He took a few minutes, and he wrote a handwritten note on a piece of yellow, like notebook paper, and gave it to me. And I asked if it was okay if I had Jesus read it to me. And he said, sure it was. I still have it in a very special flat place in a fireproof box. What Jose told me is that his entire life he had felt unnoticed, and that for the first time in his life, me, an American, had taken his photograph, and it made him feel important. And the note said, for the first time in his life, he felt that he was important and that someone noticed him. It was very touching. I had trouble composing myself after Jesus read the note to me. The curiosity in this situation was mine. I thought he looked interesting. But Jose also had curiosity. He wanted to know why I took his picture. I gave him an answer, and his response to me was overwhelming. It helped me understand more about about Jose. It also helped me understand more about photographing individuality. My primary goal as a photographer is to photograph individuality, not to photograph just people. I want to photograph individuality. Every time people that I'm photographing have questions for me, or they have answers to my questions, I learn more about the individuality of other people. The more I learn about individuality, the more I am able to do what I call photographing individuality. So my curiosity serves me well, and the curiosity of the people I'm photographing often serves me well also. So I wholeheartedly recommend nurturing and embracing curiosity when you're capturing images of other people. I put a lot of effort into nurturing my curiosity. It's an ongoing process that I nurture every chance I get. And that's all I have to say about this photo. I'll touch on curiosity 2 more times in the last 5 posts in this series, but it'll be in a little bit different way. So that's all I have to say about Rosa and Santa Barbara. Next time, I will focus on a photograph from a Spanish bullfight Earlier in the series, I talked about a Portuguese bullfight. This time it will be a Spanish bullfight. As always, I appreciate your attention. I appreciate your interest in what's going on in my head when I'm capturing images. Curiosity captured the image of Rosa and Santa Barbara. Okay, that's all for now. I'll do the next post in a couple of days, and I'll see you then. Thank you.